Mental Evolution by Eleanor Grace Whitmore. Introduction. The Journey of the Expanding Mind. There is a quiet revolution happening within each of us. Not the kind that makes headlines or echoes through city squares, but one that stirs gently in the corridors of the human mind. It is the evolution of thought, a gradual yet unstoppable expansion of awareness, insight, and potential. Mental evolution is not merely a chronicle of intellectual growth. It is an invitation to witness, engage with, and participate in the unfolding story of human consciousness. From the earliest flickers of awareness in prehistoric times to the sophisticated cognitive landscapes of the present day, our minds have undergone a profound transformation. At first, survival demanded that we think in basic binary terms: safe or unsafe, food or famine, threat or trust. But over time, our minds began asking different questions. Questions of meaning, of morality, of mystery. This shift marked the beginning of a grand and endless ascent. We often imagine evolution as a purely biological process: bones growing stronger, senses sharpening, species adapting. Yet the most significant evolution in our human story has taken place within the unseen: the way we perceive, the way we reason, and the way we create. Ideas have become our tools, beliefs our building blocks, and questions our compass. The mind, once tethered to survival, is now reaching for stars, contemplating eternity, engineering futures, and navigating the complexities of identity, truth, and consciousness. This book explores that journey. Each chapter takes a step along the evolutionary path of thought, from the primal awareness of early man to the digitally hyper-connected minds of today. We will uncover the myths that guided ancient tribes, the philosophies that gave birth to civilization, the revolutions in science that redefined our reality, and the spiritual awakenings that expanded our inner worlds. Through these pages, you'll discover how language gave form to abstract thought, how logic offered structure to emotion, and how mindfulness opened new doors to presence and peace. But mental evolution is not a detached academic study. It is deeply personal. The evolution of the mind is not something that happened once and is now complete. It is happening still, in you, in me, in all of us. Every time you challenge an assumption, seek a deeper truth, or dare to think differently, you contribute to the great unfolding of human potential. We are living in a time when our minds are both more powerful and more vulnerable than ever. Technology amplifies our thoughts, but also distracts them. Information is abundant, but wisdom remains rare. In this paradox lies our challenge: to evolve not just faster minds, but better ones. Minds that are resilient, reflective, and rooted in values. Minds that can balance logic with empathy, innovation with ethics, and ambition with awareness. This book is an invitation to become an architect of your own mental evolution. Whether you are a thinker, a seeker, a student, or simply curious, these chapters offer you tools, stories, and frameworks to deepen your understanding of how thought shapes reality, and how you can shape your thoughts. As we begin this journey together, I invite you to let go of certainty and embrace curiosity. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a field to be cultivated. In cultivating it, we not only transform our own lives, we leave behind a legacy of light for the minds yet to come. Let us begin the journey inward, upward, and onward. Eleanor Grace Whitmore, author, philosopher, seeker of the mind's true horizon. Chapter 1. The Dawn Within. Long before language gave shape to thought, before logic or ritual, and before the first myths danced around firelit caves, there was a flicker, a moment of awareness. It was not grand, not loud, but it was revolutionary. For the first time, a creature looked at the world not just through instinct, but through the lens of curiosity. That moment, subtle and sacred, was the birth of the conscious mind. The earliest humans lived in environments where survival required immediate reaction, not reflection. Their brains evolved to process danger quickly. The sound of rustling grass could mean a predator. Yet amidst these instincts, something remarkable began to grow. Our ancestors began to notice patterns, remember seasons, recognize faces, and respond not only to what was, but to what could be. This ability to mentally simulate possibilities, to imagine, was the foundation of the inner world. The dawn within was not a sudden event, but a slow illumination. Like the gradual brightening of the sky before sunrise, awareness expanded layer by layer. At first, it may have been basic recognition. This berry heals, that one harms. But soon, thought stretched into more abstract territory. Who am I? Why does the sun return each morning? What happens after death? These questions mark the beginning of mental evolution. They are not rooted in physical needs, but in metaphysical wonder. This ability to wonder, to move beyond the material into realms of possibility, is uniquely human. It is the essence of what makes our minds more than mere machines of biology. We often look at our ancestors and see primitive beings, but in their eyes burned the first sparks of the philosophical fire. When they painted on cave walls, it was more than art. It was memory externalized, imagination made visible. When they buried their dead with care, it was more than ritual. It was the mind wrestling with the unknown. These acts hint at the profound development taking place within the human psyche. Anthropologists often describe this phase of human history as the cognitive revolution. But perhaps a better name is the awakening, for what truly occurred was not just an increase in brain activity, but a deepening of perception. The outer world remained the same, yet suddenly, we were not just in the world. We were aware of it. The dawn of mind brought with it both power and burden. With awareness came fear, of death, of the unknown, of loneliness. But also came hope, the belief in better tomorrows, the capacity to dream, to create, to love. In that duality, the beauty of human consciousness was born. This chapter in our evolution reminds us that the greatest transformations often begin within, not with tools or weapons, but with thought. A shift in perspective, a new question, a quiet noticing. Even today, this process continues. Each time we pause to reflect, to contemplate, to step outside the rhythm of routine and ask deeper questions, we honor that ancient spark. We reconnect with the lineage of minds who dared to look inward. The dawn within is not just history, it is a reminder, a call to return to that space of wonder where evolution truly begins, not in the body, but in the awareness behind the eyes. It reminds us that every great leap, whether in civilization or in personal growth, begins with noticing something new, feeling something different, thinking something deeper. So as we begin this journey through the evolution of thought, let us begin where it all started, with the quiet, luminous miracle of becoming aware and choosing to see not just the world, but the self through awakened eyes. Chapter 2: Primitive Perceptions. Before civilization, before philosophy, even before spoken language fully matured, the human mind was learning to see the world, not only with eyes, but with meaning. In this early phase of mental evolution, known as the time of primitive perceptions, survival was paramount. But beneath the surface of daily struggle, the roots of imagination, belief, and understanding were already taking hold. The world of early humans was alive, not just biologically, but experientially. Every tree, rock, river, and animal seemed to carry a force, a presence, perhaps even a voice. These weren't hallucinations or mistakes. They were the first attempts to interpret the world through feeling, sensation, and intuition. The line between external reality and internal perception was not as rigid as it is today. In fact, it barely existed. This animistic worldview, where all things are perceived as alive or spiritually significant, was the original mental lens of humankind. Lightning wasn't just electricity, it was a sign. A thunderstorm wasn't just a weather pattern, it was the voice of the sky. Early humans assigned meaning to every movement around them, not because they lacked understanding, but because perception was deeply woven with emotion and survival. In a world without science, stories became the instruments of explanation. To perceive was to feel, and to feel was to tell stories about the moon, the hunt, the fire, the wind. These stories weren't fictional entertainment. They were essential truths encoded in memory. Through these stories, the mind began shaping the world into something understandable, and in doing so, shaped itself. Imagine the life of a hunter-gatherer. Every step must be cautious, every rustle could signal danger, and every change in the wind could mean a shift in survival. In such a setting, the brain had to become highly sensitive, not just to sound and sight, but to patterns and impressions. From this hyper-awareness grew the ability to anticipate, to infer, and to symbolize. One of the greatest leaps during this period was the association between symbols and meaning. A carved mark on a tree might signify territory. A pile of stones might indicate a sacred spot. These weren't just physical changes to the environment. They were evidence that the human mind was learning to store memory externally, to project thought into space, to make the invisible visible. Primitive perceptions were also deeply communal. Thought wasn't just personal, it was tribal. The mind was not yet individuated the way it is now. Knowledge was shared through ritual, passed from elder to child, embedded in dance, drum beats, and sacred symbols. The group's collective perception became the individual's truth. In this way, culture was born, not as art or music, but as a shared mental environment. Culture told you where you belonged, how to behave, what to fear, and what to worship. It framed the raw data of experience into patterns of meaning, and in doing so, it formed the early architecture of the human psyche. The primitive mind was not simple. It was intuitive, rich, and deeply connected to its environment. It was the mind of the dreamer, the wanderer, the listener. It looked for signs in everything and found messages in silence. It was a mind not yet dominated by logic, but alive with a kind of spiritual clarity, a deep listening to the rhythms of the earth. As we move forward in this book, we will encounter the rise of rationality, structure, and analysis. But let us not forget that it all began here, in the sacred simplicity of perception, in the misty consciousness of our ancestors, where the world was not just seen, but felt. Primitive perceptions laid the foundation for everything to come. Before we built civilizations, we built beliefs. Before we had reason, we had reverence. And before we knew the world, we imagined it. Chapter 3: Fire of Awareness. The story of human thought changed forever when our ancestors discovered how to command fire. It was more than a survival tool. It was a symbol and spark of awakening. Fire brought warmth, safety, and the ability to cook food. But perhaps more profoundly, it ignited something within the mind. A new level of awareness, one that would blaze through the ages. Around fire, we didn't just survive. We gathered, we reflected, we told stories. In its glow, the day extended into night, giving birth to the first true leisure, time to think, wonder, and imagine. With fire came transformation, of materials, of environments, and most importantly, of thought. Before fire, life was dictated by nature's rhythms. Night meant danger and retreat, but fire challenged this reality. It gave our ancestors a sense of control over darkness, over time, over fear. That control was not just physical, it was psychological. It taught us that we could alter the world with intention, and in doing so, it lit a torch in the human psyche. the belief that change was possible. This belief is at the very core of awareness. To be aware is not simply to notice, but to know that you notice. It's the difference between sensing a shadow and questioning its meaning. Fire became a mirror. In its flicker, people saw their thoughts dancing for the first time. It is no coincidence that fire holds a sacred place in nearly every ancient tradition. From the Olympic flame of the Greeks, to the sacred hearth of the Romans, from the Vedic fire rituals in India, to the eternal flames of Native American ceremonies, fire is seen as more than physical. It is a metaphor for spirit, insight, and transformation. Why? Because it reflects something deeply human: the transition from instinct to awareness. Around those first fires, minds began to evolve not just biologically, but symbolically. Children listened to the stories of elders, absorbing knowledge not through direct experience, but through narrative. This transmission of thought, of invisible ideas wrapped in words, was a milestone. It marked a shift from the external to the internal, from reaction to reflection. Fire also allowed for the refinement of tools, the shaping of pottery, and the hardening of spears. In this way, it enabled early humans to shape not only their environment, but their future. They began to think ahead, to plan, to prepare, mental activities that rely heavily on self-awareness and foresight. But awareness is not just about looking forward. It is also about turning inward. Around the fire, individuals began to develop a sense of self. They compared, remembered, judged, and imagined. They contemplated not only what was outside, but what was within. From this came the seeds of personal identity, of individual experience. The mind began to ask, "What do I think?" and not just, "What do we do?" And so, the fire of awareness did not simply light the night, it lit the human mind. It kindled a lifelong relationship between light and thought, between flame and reflection. It showed us that we are not merely creatures of habit, but beings capable of vision. With awareness, we became architects of meaning, sculptors of belief, and builders of inner worlds. In today's world of artificial light and glowing screens, the ancient fire may seem like a distant relic. Yet the same fire still burns, not in wood and smoke, but in the quiet moments of insight, in the warmth of connection, in the spark of a new idea. To be aware is to be alive in the deepest sense. It is to see not just with eyes, but with understanding. And it all began with fire, not just in the hands, but in the heart of the mind. Chapter 4: Language and Logic. As the fire of awareness grew brighter within the human mind, it demanded new tools to express itself. Thought alone was no longer enough. It needed a voice, a shape, a structure. From this need emerged one of the most powerful forces in human history: language. And with language came logic, the framework that would shape how we think, communicate, and build civilizations. Language was not invented in a single moment. It evolved gradually, from gestures and grunts to sounds, symbols, and syntax. But its impact was immediate and profound. For the first time, humans could encode thoughts, name objects, share memories, and transmit ideas across time and space. This changed everything. With words, a mother could teach her child not to eat a poisonous fruit. A hunter could describe the shape of a beast seen in the distance. A leader could call others to action. And a thinker could wonder aloud, what lies beyond the stars? Words gave thought legs, allowing it to travel, connect, and evolve. Before language, thoughts lived and died within individuals. But with language, thoughts became communal. They formed stories, songs, myths, and instructions. Language turned fleeting ideas into lasting culture. But language did more than help us share thoughts. It helped us shape them. The way we speak influences the way we think. A person who knows the word freedom sees the world differently than one who doesn't. Language provides categories, comparisons, and metaphors that guide how we perceive and understand reality. In this way, language is not just a tool of thought, it is its architect. Alongside language emerged its twin sibling, logic. As words became more complex, so did the relationships between them. People began to notice patterns. If one thing happened, another would follow. If a statement was true, then certain conclusions must be true as well. This growing awareness gave rise to the earliest forms of reasoning. Logic allowed humans to build arguments, solve problems, and make decisions based on more than instinct or tradition. It offered a way to test ideas, to challenge assumptions, and to seek truth. Ancient cultures like those of Egypt, Babylon, and India used early forms of logic in their rituals, calendars, and mathematics. But it was in ancient Greece that logic was named, examined, and formalized. Philosophers like Aristotle gave us the foundations of deductive reasoning. If all men are mortal, and Socrates is a man, then Socrates is mortal. These simple yet powerful statements represented a giant leap in thought. Logic allowed humans to reason about unseen realities, to explore the abstract, and to construct systems of belief that could be tested and refined. Yet even as logic offered structure, it did not replace emotion, intuition, or creativity. Instead, it balanced them. Language and logic together gave rise to a more complete mind, one that could feel deeply but also think clearly, one that could dream and then build that dream into something real. In the modern world, we often take language and logic for granted. We speak thousands of words a day without noticing their power. But every time we explain ourselves, make a plan, or solve a problem, we are standing on the shoulders of countless generations who shaped these tools with care. Language and logic are more than skills. They are sacred inheritances. They are the flame passed down from mind to mind, allowing us not only to communicate, but to contemplate, question, and connect. They remind us that the evolution of the mind is not just about what we know, but how we say it, how we think it, and how we understand it. Chapter 5: The Myth Mind. Long before history was written in books, it was carved in memory, passed down by voice, ritual, and imagination. The earliest civilizations didn't just observe the world, they narrated it. They filled the gaps of understanding with meaning, and in doing so, gave rise to one of the most powerful tools of the evolving mind: myth. The myth mind is not primitive or irrational. It is, in fact, the birthplace of symbolic thought, metaphor, and moral imagination. To early humans, myths were not stories in the modern sense of fiction or fantasy. They were living truths, frameworks that helped explain the unexplainable and connect the known with the mysterious. Myths made sense of the stars, the seasons, suffering, joy, death, and destiny. A myth didn't just explain what was happening, it explored why. Why does the sun rise each day? Why do crops die? Why do we dream? Myths offered poetic answers to these questions, shaping the emotional and moral world of the listener. They taught values, preserved knowledge, and united communities around shared meaning. Consider the mythologies of ancient Egypt, India, Greece, or the Norse tribes. Each culture developed intricate cosmologies, gods and goddesses, heroes and villains, heavens and underworlds. These narratives helped people orient themselves in a vast, unpredictable world. In the story of a trickster god, they could understand the chaos of life. In the sacrifice of a heroic figure, they could find courage and hope. The mind that creates and consumes myth is one that seeks symbolism. It sees deeper than surface facts. The serpent is not just a reptile, it becomes a symbol of danger, wisdom, or rebirth. The flood is not just a weather event, it becomes a metaphor for cleansing, destruction, or divine judgment. This is the genius of the myth mind. It turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. This capacity to symbolize marked a major evolutionary leap. Symbols allow the mind to link concepts, layer meanings, and operate in abstraction. A myth is like a mental map, guiding not only outer behavior but inner development. It shows us how to be brave, how to suffer with dignity, how to forgive, how to seek truth. Moreover, myths created shared realities. When a tribe believed in the same creation story, they were not just bound by blood or survival. They were bound by narrative. This gave rise to culture, tradition, and a collective identity. It helped turn groups of people into civilizations. But myths also evolved. As societies grew more complex, so did their stories. Heroes became more conflicted. Gods took on human flaws. Moral lessons grew deeper and more ambiguous. This evolution reflected the increasing depth and complexity of the human psyche. The myth mind was expanding, asking not only why the world is, but why we are the way we are. Even today, the myth mind lives on. In modern stories, movies, and even scientific metaphors, we still use symbolic frameworks to understand our place in the universe. We speak of journeys, transformations, light versus darkness, ancient motifs reborn in new forms. The myth mind is not obsolete, it is foundational. While logic seeks clarity, myth seeks meaning. Both are necessary. To evolve mentally is not to discard myth, but to understand and integrate it. Myths are not lies. They are deeper truths told through the language of the soul. As we continue the journey of mental evolution, let us remember that some truths are not just meant to be analyzed. They are meant to be felt. And through myth, we feel the heartbeat of humanity, echoing across time, reminding us who we are, where we come from, and what we strive to become. Chapter 6: Rational Awakening. There comes a moment in every evolution when the mist begins to lift, when clarity demands its place alongside wonder. For the human mind, this moment arrived slowly, yet decisively, as myth gave way to method, and belief began to coexist with reason. This was the rational awakening, a turning point in mental evolution that forever altered the way we perceive reality, truth, and ourselves. The myth mind had guided humanity through the early chapters of its story, offering meaning in metaphor and wisdom through symbolism. But as societies grew, cities rose, and written language spread, a new kind of thinking emerged. One that questioned the old stories not to dismiss them, but to understand the underlying forces behind them. This shift was most famously embodied by the thinkers of ancient Greece. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, names still spoken with reverence, were not merely philosophers but pioneers of thought itself. They introduced the idea that truth could be pursued through inquiry, tested through reason, and organized through logic. It was a radical transformation, to not just accept the world as told, but to interrogate it. Socrates, with his relentless questioning, challenged assumptions and invited introspection. Plato, through his dialogues, explored the nature of reality, justice, and the soul. Aristotle, methodical and observant, laid the groundwork for formal logic, ethics, and natural science. These minds, and others like them, laid the philosophical foundation for a new era of consciousness, one rooted in clarity, coherence, and critical thinking. But the rational awakening was not confined to Greece. In India, the Upanishadic thinkers and Buddhist scholars developed profound systems of logic and metaphysics. In China, Confucius and Laozi introduced moral reasoning and political thought. In the Islamic world, polymaths like Avicenna and Averroes synthesized philosophy with science and theology. Across the globe, the mind was stirring with new energy, a hunger not only for answers, but for methods of discovering them. At the heart of this awakening was a simple but powerful shift. Thought became self-aware. The mind began to study the mind. It asked not only, what is true, but how do we know what is true? This was the birth of epistemology, the study of knowledge itself. and it represented one of the highest forms of intellectual maturity. The rational mind brought with it the tools of clarity, definitions, syllogisms, hypotheses, and proofs. It taught us how to separate opinion from evidence, emotion from analysis, illusion from reality. It helped us move from subjective myths to objective understanding. And with it came science, the systematic observation of nature, grounded in repeatable evidence and predictive power. But reason was never meant to erase myth, only to balance it. Where the myth mind seeks meaning, the rational mind seeks structure. Together, they form the complete human intelligence, intuitive and analytical, emotional and logical, imaginative and empirical. It is important to remember that the rational awakening did not make humanity less human. It made us more conscious. It offered us the ability to step outside our instincts and traditions, to examine our beliefs, and to choose our path with intention. It gave us mirrors for the mind, disciplines like philosophy, mathematics, and ethics, through which we could refine our inner world as much as the outer one. Today, we still live in the light of this awakening. Every time we question a claim, follow a thread of logic, or strive to understand rather than assume, we honor this legacy. Reason is not cold or distant. It is a torch that helps us navigate the unknown with courage and clarity. As we move forward in this exploration of mental evolution, we carry both fire and form, dream and discipline. The rational awakening was not an end, but a beginning. The beginning of thought as a deliberate act, a conscious craft, and a lifelong journey. Chapter 7. Mind and Morality. As the human mind evolved from instinct to awareness, from myth to reason, it faced an inevitable question. Not just what is the world, but what ought we do in it? This was the birth of morality, a deeper layer of mental evolution that brought with it responsibility, choice, and conscience. It was no longer enough to know. Now we had to decide how to live. The earliest moral codes were simple, emerging from the basic needs of cooperation and survival. Don't steal. Don't kill. Share with your group. Respect your elders. These principles helped tribes function, ensuring protection and harmony in small, tight-knit communities. But as societies grew larger and more complex, so too did their ethical frameworks. The rational awakening, with its tools of logic and reflection, added a new dimension to morality. Philosophers began to ask, what makes something right or wrong? Are moral truths universal or relative? Should we follow tradition, reason, or inner feeling when making decisions? These questions gave rise to entire schools of ethical thought, utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, and more, each offering different answers to the same eternal inquiry: how should we live? In every culture, morality evolved as both a personal compass and a societal glue. It guided behavior, influenced law, and inspired art, religion, and literature. Morality told stories about heroes and villains, not only to entertain, but to teach. It painted visions of justice, compassion, honor, and sacrifice, ideals that helped humanity reach beyond base instinct. But morality is not fixed. It evolves alongside the mind that creates it. What was once considered moral may be challenged by new perspectives. The practice of slavery, once accepted by ancient civilizations, is now seen as a gross violation of human dignity. The rights of women, children, and marginalized groups have expanded as societies re-examine their moral assumptions. This shows that as the mind grows in awareness, so does its moral vision. This expansion is not always comfortable. Moral evolution often comes with conflict, between generations, between cultures, and within ourselves. We struggle with ethical dilemmas, torn between reason and emotion, duty and desire, loyalty and justice. But these struggles are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a mind that is alive and growing. One of the most profound developments in human morality has been the rise of empathy. the ability to feel what others feel. While logic can help us reason through ethical puzzles, it is empathy that gives morality its soul. Without empathy, ethics becomes cold calculation. With it, morality becomes a living expression of compassion. Modern neuroscience shows us that moral reasoning involves both the logical and emotional parts of the brain. This reinforces what spiritual traditions have long taught. Wisdom is not only in the head, but also in the heart. The most evolved minds are not merely intelligent. They are kind, courageous, and deeply connected to the suffering and joy of others. In a world facing immense challenges, inequality, climate change, technological disruption, the moral dimension of thought is more vital than ever. We have the knowledge to build powerful tools, but do we have the wisdom to use them well? Mental evolution without moral evolution is a recipe for imbalance, even destruction. To evolve mentally, we must also evolve ethically. We must nurture values like truth, respect, humility, and justice. We must teach not only skills, but character. And we must remember that the highest purpose of thought is not just to understand the world, but to make it better. As we move forward in this journey, let us carry with us the understanding that morality is not a constraint on freedom. It is its finest expression. It is the mind choosing, with open eyes and an open heart, to serve something greater than itself. Chapter 8: The Scientific Shift. For millennia, humans explained the world through stories, symbols, and spirits. But as the rational mind matured, a new approach emerged, one that sought not only meaning, but measurable truth. This was the scientific shift, a profound transformation in the evolution of thought that changed not just what we know, but how we know. The roots of scientific thinking stretch back to ancient civilizations. The Egyptians tracked the stars to build calendars and pyramids. The Babylonians recorded astronomical patterns. In ancient India, scholars formulated early ideas about atoms and the nature of the cosmos. But it was during the scientific revolution in 16th and 17th century Europe that the scientific method, observation, experimentation, hypothesis, and analysis, became the standard for uncovering truth. This shift did not happen overnight. It was the product of brave minds who dared to challenge long-held beliefs. Nicholas Copernicus proposed that the Earth was not the center of the universe. Galileo Galilei used a telescope to observe the heavens, confirming this theory and angering the Church. Johannes Kepler discovered the laws of planetary motion. Isaac Newton, with his laws of motion and gravity, unified the physical universe in ways previously unimaginable. What these thinkers had in common was not just intelligence, but a commitment to evidence over assumption. They believed that nature followed laws, and that these laws could be discovered by anyone willing to observe carefully and reason clearly. This democratization of knowledge, the idea that truth was not reserved for priests or kings but accessible through inquiry, was revolutionary. The scientific shift gave us not only answers but tools: microscopes to explore the unseen, telescopes to reach the stars, and equations to predict the movement of planets or particles. It allowed us to understand disease, engineer machines, and harness energy. It turned imagination into innovation. But the most profound contribution of science may not be its discoveries. It is its discipline of doubt. Science does not demand belief. It invites questions. A theory is never final. It is tested, retested, and revised in the light of new evidence. This humility, built into the scientific process, reflects a deeply evolved mind, one that knows certainty is often an illusion. Yet, like all powerful tools, science comes with its shadows. The same knowledge that creates medicine can create weapons. The same curiosity that lands us on the moon can strip the Earth of its resources. The danger lies not in science itself, but in separating it from ethics. The scientific mind must be paired with the moral mind, or else progress may come at too high a cost. Moreover, science does not replace the human spirit, it expands it. It does not make myth or meaning obsolete, it offers a different lens. A rainbow is no less beautiful because we understand the physics behind it. In fact, knowing how light bends through raindrops adds a new dimension of awe. The scientific shift also changed how we see ourselves. Darwin's theory of evolution placed humans not apart from nature, but within it. Genetics revealed the code of life. Psychology explored the mind as a system. Neuroscience peered into consciousness. We are no longer just observers of nature, we are part of its unfolding. Today, we stand on the shoulders of centuries of discovery. Yet the spirit of the scientific shift remains alive whenever we ask, what is really true? How do we know? Can we prove it? Whether in laboratories or classrooms, in space exploration or climate science, the scientific mind continues to illuminate the world. The scientific shift represents one of the greatest triumphs of mental evolution, not just because it gave us knowledge, but because it gave us a way to seek it, refine it, and share it. It is a reminder that truth is not given, it is uncovered, one question at a time. Chapter 9. The Inner Universe. As the scientific mind charted the stars, decoded DNA, and mapped the Earth, another frontier quietly called for exploration, one without edges, galaxies, or instruments. It was the inner universe, the vast, intricate, and often mysterious landscape of thought, feeling, memory, and identity. This was not a space outside of us, but within, one that once entered would revolutionize our understanding of what it means to be human. The inner universe begins with a simple yet profound question. What is the mind? For centuries, we treated the mind as an invisible companion, shaped by the soul or spirit, often governed by the whims of gods or fate. But as the rational and scientific awakenings progressed, thinkers and healers turned their gaze inward. They sought not only to observe the stars or split atoms, but to unravel the threads of consciousness itself. The ancient yogis of India had already begun this journey thousands of years ago, mapping the terrain of awareness through meditation, breath, and stillness. In the East, the mind was not merely a tool for thinking. It was a doorway to transcendence, to silence, to union with the divine. These traditions honored introspection as a path to truth, where discipline of thought could lead to inner peace and enlightenment. In the West, the journey took a different shape. With the rise of psychology in the 19th and 20th centuries, the inner universe became the subject of systematic study. Sigmund Freud ventured into the unconscious, suggesting that hidden desires and childhood experiences shape our behavior. Carl Jung expanded this idea, exploring archetypes in the collective unconscious, a symbolic realm shared across humanity. These pioneers opened a new chapter in mental evolution. They showed that thoughts could be analyzed like data, dreams could be decoded like stories, and trauma could echo silently through decades. The mind was not just a light switch, it was a labyrinth, sometimes gentle, sometimes haunting, always profound. Understanding the inner universe helped reveal both our brilliance and our vulnerability. It explained why we feel joy and shame, why we repeat old patterns, why we sabotage ourselves or soar beyond expectation. It gave us insight into depression, anxiety, creativity, love, and resilience. In doing so, it laid the foundation for healing, personally and collectively. As neuroscience developed, the physical roots of the inner world were revealed. Brain scans began to show how emotion and memory light up specific regions. We learned how habits form, how neurons wire together, and how plastic the brain truly is. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, proved that our inner universe is not static. It can grow, adapt, and transform. But perhaps most importantly, this chapter of evolution reminds us that the greatest mysteries are not always out there. We spend lifetimes seeking success, knowledge, and fulfillment in the external world, but often overlook the treasures within. The capacity to observe one's own thoughts, to change internal narratives, to calm the mind, to cultivate purpose, these are the true frontiers of growth. The inner universe is both intimate and universal. It connects us to ourselves and through shared emotions and experiences to each other. In understanding our own minds, we become more compassionate toward others. In recognizing our own wounds, we gain empathy. In facing our own shadows, we rediscover our light. The journey inward is not always easy. It requires courage, honesty, and patience. But every insight gained, every limiting belief released, every new perspective embraced, these are evolutionary leaps. Not in muscle or bone, but in heart and soul. The universe within mirrors the one without, infinite, evolving, waiting to be explored. And as we continue this mental evolution, we must remember that the most profound discoveries often lie not in new lands, but in new ways of seeing, especially when the eyes are turned inward. Chapter 10. Learning to Learn. At the heart of every stage of mental evolution lies one essential ability: learning. It is the engine that powers growth, the bridge between ignorance and understanding, the skill that gives rise to all others. And yet, for most of human history, learning was treated as a passive process, something that happened to us, rather than something we could master. Only recently have we begun to realize that the true mark of an evolved mind is not how much it knows, but how well it learns to learn. In our earliest days, learning was purely experiential. We learned by doing, watching, mimicking. A child saw an elder weave a basket or track an animal and followed in their steps. There were no classrooms or syllabi, only life, raw and real, as the great teacher. And this instinctive learning worked well for centuries. But as human knowledge expanded and societies grew more complex, the process of learning itself needed to evolve. It was no longer enough to repeat what had been done before. We had to acquire, organize, and apply new information quickly and wisely. This gave rise to formal education, a structured system designed to pass down skills and knowledge from one generation to the next. Yet somewhere along the way, learning became rigid. Systems focused more on memorization than understanding, on grades more than growth. The joy of discovery was often replaced with the pressure to perform. As a result, many came to believe that intelligence was fixed, that some were smart and others were not, as if learning were a gift rather than a skill. But modern science paints a very different picture. Neuroscience and psychology have revealed that the brain is plastic, meaning it can change and grow at any age. New neural pathways form with every challenge we engage, every mistake we reflect on, every concept we revisit. Intelligence, in this light, is not a static trait. It is a dynamic process. This realization has given rise to a new wave of thought, metacognition, thinking about thinking. When we become aware of how we learn, we can improve it. We can identify our learning styles, our habits of mind, our cognitive biases. We can ask better questions, set clearer goals, and reflect more deeply on what we've understood. This is learning to learn. One of the most empowering shifts in education today is the move from a content-based approach to a learner-centered one. Instead of simply absorbing facts, learners are encouraged to explore, experiment, and make meaning. Teachers become facilitators, and students become active participants in their own growth. This shift also places value on failure, not as a setback, but as a vital part of the process. Every error is an opportunity to adapt and refine. Every struggle is a signal that growth is taking place. A mind that knows how to learn welcomes challenges, because it sees them not as threats, but as invitations to evolve. In the digital age, learning is more accessible than ever before. We can study languages, philosophy, coding, or art from anywhere in the world. But with this abundance comes the need for discernment. We must learn how to choose what matters, how to question sources, how to balance depth with speed. True learning is not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about becoming. It shapes our character, sharpens our vision, and expands our possibilities. And when we commit to lifelong learning, we are not merely adapting to the world, we are co-creating it. The most evolved minds are not those that know everything, but those that never stop growing. They remain humble, curious, open. They ask not just, "What do I know?" but "What can I understand next?" To learn is to live fully, and to learn how to learn. That is the most powerful evolution of all. Chapter 11. The Emotional Brain. For centuries, the mind and the heart were treated as separate, even opposing, forces. Reason was seen as noble, while emotion was considered wild and irrational. Philosophers praised logic. Scientists sought objectivity. Emotion was often dismissed as a weakness, a distraction from clear thinking. But modern neuroscience tells a different story. Emotion isn't the enemy of reason, it's its partner. The truth is that we don't think in spite of emotion, we think through it. And understanding the emotional brain is essential to understanding ourselves. Emotion evolved long before higher reasoning. It was the language of survival. Long before we could speak or calculate, our ancestors needed to respond instantly to threats and opportunities. Fear kept them from danger. Joy reinforced good behavior. Disgust protected them from toxins. These responses were not optional. They were embedded in the brain's architecture. The center of these responses lies in the limbic system, a network of structures including the amygdala, hippocampus, and hypothalamus. The amygdala, in particular, is like an internal alarm. It scans every experience for signs of danger and reacts with speed. It doesn't wait for logic to catch up. This is why our hearts race before we understand why, or why we jump before realizing it was just a shadow. But the emotional brain is not just reactive, it is also deeply wise. Emotions carry information. They tell us what we value, what we fear, what we long for. They guide relationships, fuel creativity, and shape decision-making in ways we are only beginning to understand. The famous neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studied patients who had damaged the emotional parts of their brains. Though these individuals could think rationally and solve problems on paper, they struggled to make even the simplest decisions in real life: what to eat, what to wear, where to go. Without emotion, their thinking was paralyzed. This revealed a profound truth. Emotion gives thought direction. Every choice we make is influenced by feelings, whether we admit it or not. Our memories are tagged with emotion. We remember moments of joy or pain far more vividly than neutral events. Emotion helps prioritize what matters. It tells us when something is urgent, meaningful, or dangerous. It helps us care. As our understanding of the emotional brain has grown, so has our ability to cultivate emotional intelligence, the skill of recognizing, understanding, and managing emotions in ourselves and others. Emotional intelligence is not about suppressing feelings, but integrating them wisely. It includes self-awareness, empathy, emotional regulation, and social skills, all essential for personal and professional success. In fact, studies have shown that emotional intelligence often predicts success more reliably than IQ. Why? Because life is not a series of tests. It's a series of relationships, decisions, setbacks, and adaptations. The ability to remain calm under pressure, to navigate conflict, to inspire trust, these depend not on how much we know, but on how well we manage what we feel. Our emotional brain also connects us deeply to others. Empathy, compassion, love, these are not abstract ideals. They are neurologically real. Mirror neurons in the brain allow us to feel what others feel, forging a sense of connection that transcends words. In this way, emotion becomes a social glue, a source of collective wisdom and human unity. To evolve mentally is not to rise above emotion, but to rise with it, to become fluent in its language, to listen to its signals, and to honor its role in shaping who we are. In the grand journey of mental evolution, logic and reason are guiding stars, but emotion is the warmth that gives life meaning. It is the music beneath the mathematics, the color within the calculation, the soul of the mind. Chapter 12: Cognitive Expansion. As humanity progressed through ages of myth, reason, emotion, and inquiry, something extraordinary began to unfold. Our cognitive capacities did not just deepen, they expanded. Like the universe itself, the mind began stretching beyond its known boundaries, seeking more complex ways of thinking, learning, and interacting. This chapter of evolution, the era of cognitive expansion, is still unfolding, and it is one of the most exhilarating and demanding phases in our mental journey. At its core, cognitive expansion refers to the increasing breadth, depth, and flexibility of human thought. Where once we could only process the concrete, things we could see, touch, or taste, we began to master the abstract. We could imagine futures we hadn't lived, consider others' perspectives, hold contradictory ideas in our minds, and navigate moral, philosophical, and technological complexity. This leap was not accidental. It was nurtured by education, language, culture, and, most recently, technology. Each tool we created, from the printing press to the internet, acted as an amplifier of cognition. We stored memory in books, shared ideas through broadcast media, and now upload vast stores of human knowledge to the cloud. These tools extended our working memory, enabling us to think in larger and more connected patterns. But cognitive expansion is more than just having access to more information. It's about the quality of thinking. The most advanced minds aren't simply those that know the most facts, but those that can synthesize, critique, and innovate across disciplines. They move fluidly between analytical reasoning and creative insight, between emotional intelligence and strategic planning. Consider the mental flexibility required in modern life, juggling multiple roles, adapting to rapid change, interpreting global events, evaluating endless streams of digital content, and making decisions that affect not just our own lives, but those of others across time zones and cultures. To thrive in this environment, we need not only intelligence, we need meta-intelligence, the ability to think about thinking, to regulate our attention, to challenge our own biases, and to consciously evolve our mental models. One of the most transformative elements of cognitive expansion is the ability to think in systems. Instead of seeing isolated events, we begin to perceive interconnectedness, how education affects economy, how climate change links to politics, how personal habits ripple through communities. This systems thinking empowers us to address complex problems in holistic ways, using not just knowledge, but wisdom. Another key trait of expanded cognition is creativity, the ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas and generate something new. Creativity is not confined to the arts. It is at the heart of scientific discovery, entrepreneurship, and even diplomacy. In a cognitively expanded world, creativity becomes a survival skill, the means by which we reimagine possibilities and solve problems with originality. Yet with great mental power comes new responsibility. The human brain is now constantly stimulated, multitasking, scrolling, responding, reacting. This creates mental fatigue, distraction, and even cognitive overload. To expand wisely, we must pair stimulation with mindfulness, productivity with pause, and information with integration. Cognitive expansion is also not equal across the world. While some societies benefit from advanced education and technology, others face barriers that limit the growth of their people's potential. As a global community, part of our responsibility is to democratize cognitive opportunity, to ensure all minds have access to tools, ideas, and environments that nurture growth. Ultimately, cognitive expansion is not just about what the brain can do, it's about what kind of world we can create with that ability. Will we use it to divide or to unite, to consume or to create, to dominate or to elevate? As our mental capacities continue to evolve, the question we must keep asking is, are we expanding in wisdom as much as in ability? For the true success of cognitive evolution lies not in the size of our thoughts, but in the depth of our insight, the clarity of our intention, and the kindness with which we wield our minds. Chapter 13. The Age of Distraction. In the grand journey of mental evolution, each era has brought with it new tools, challenges, and insights. Today we live in a time of unprecedented access to information, communication, and opportunity. But with this abundance comes a paradox. Never before has the mind had so much to engage with, and never before has it been so easily pulled apart. We have entered the age of distraction, a time when the greatest threat to the evolving mind is not ignorance, but fragmentation. Our ancestors faced the raw distractions of survival, weather, predators, hunger. Today, the distractions are digital, emotional, and psychological. The average person now consumes thousands of pieces of information each day, switching between tasks, apps, notifications, and platforms in a relentless blur. Focus, once the hallmark of a trained mind, is now a scarce commodity. This cognitive environment is not accidental. Modern technology, especially social media, streaming services, and mobile apps, is designed to capture attention and keep it. We are constantly nudged, pinged, and prompted. Our brains, wired for novelty and dopamine, respond with quick bursts of interest, reinforcing the habit of constant mental switching. But the cost is high. Studies show that multitasking significantly reduces cognitive performance. When we jump from one thought to another without pause, we sacrifice depth for speed, clarity for stimulation, and presence for reaction. The mind becomes scattered, tired, and less capable of sustained, meaningful thought. More subtly, distraction also affects identity and purpose. When we are always responding to external inputs, news feeds, likes, messages, trends, we lose touch with our inner compass. The voice within is drowned out by the noise without. We begin to live reactively, not intentionally. We mistake busyness for progress and stimulation for fulfillment. The age of distraction is not just a personal challenge, it is a collective one. In education, attention spans are shrinking. In relationships, presence is fading. In society, polarization deepens as algorithms feed us curated realities that reinforce our biases and keep us scrolling. Attention has become the new currency, and every app, advertisement, and platform is competing to own a piece of it. Yet all is not lost. Just as the mind has evolved to adapt to challenges before, it can rise to meet this one too. The solution is not to reject technology or retreat from the modern world. It is to reclaim control, to become conscious of how we use our time, our tools, and our thoughts. The antidote to distraction is attention, deliberate, focused, compassionate attention. This begins with awareness, noticing when we are distracted, recognizing the patterns that lead us there, and gently choosing to return. It continues with practice, setting boundaries, creating spaces for deep work, cultivating stillness, and rediscovering the joy of single tasking. One of the most powerful tools for reclaiming attention is mindfulness, the simple act of being fully present in the moment, without judgment. Whether through meditation, breathwork, or simply slowing down, mindfulness strengthens the muscle of attention. It quiets the noise and brings the mind back to center. We must also redesign our environments, both digital and physical, to support focus and intentionality. Just as a cluttered room overwhelms the senses, a cluttered digital life fragments the mind. Curate your inputs, unplug regularly, choose quality over quantity, protect your attention as you would your health, for in many ways it is your health. The age of distraction may be one of the greatest tests of mental evolution yet, but it is also an opportunity to become more aware, more intentional, more awake. To remember that your attention is your power, and what you give it to becomes your reality. The future belongs not to the busiest minds, but to the most present ones. In a world of noise, the evolved mind learns to listen. In a time of scattering, it learns to gather itself and focus. Chapter 14: Mindful Resistance. In a world that moves faster by the day, where distractions multiply and demands never cease, the modern mind finds itself in a state of constant motion. We are urged to hustle, to consume, to stay updated, to always be on. In this climate of relentless stimulation, the act of slowing down is no longer just a preference. It is an act of quiet rebellion. This is the essence of mindful resistance, the conscious choice to pause, reflect, and reclaim our attention, values, and inner peace. Mindful resistance is not loud. It doesn't seek to fight the external world with noise or force. Instead, it works from within, choosing calm over chaos, presence over reaction, stillness over constant stimulation. It begins with a simple, radical act: noticing. Noticing how we feel. Noticing how we think. Noticing how we are swept away, moment by moment, by things that often don't truly matter. This kind of resistance requires awareness, but awareness alone is not enough. It must be paired with intention. It is easy to recognize that we are distracted, overwhelmed, or disconnected. It is harder to do something about it. That is where mindfulness becomes a practice, not just an idea. It is the practice of returning, again and again, to what is real, meaningful, and grounding. In the age of instant gratification, mindful resistance teaches delayed depth. It tells us that not everything needs a reply. Not every urge needs an action. Not every piece of news needs to be consumed. It reminds us that space is sacred, and silence is strength. This resistance is also about protecting the self. In the digital age, we are exposed to a constant stream of opinions, comparisons, and curated perfection. This exposure can erode our confidence, blur our boundaries, and leave us feeling hollow. Mindful resistance is the act of saying no, not from fear or avoidance, but from self-respect. It is the choice to disconnect from what diminishes us and reconnect with what nourishes us. Practically, mindful resistance might look like starting the day without a screen, taking 10 conscious breaths before responding to stress, creating tech-free zones in your life, saying no to obligations that deplete your energy, journaling to understand your thoughts instead of reacting impulsively, walking without headphones, simply observing the world, eating slowly, tasting each bite, and expressing gratitude. These actions are small, but their impact is profound. They shift the center of gravity from the external world back to the inner world. They remind the mind that it is not a slave to the system. It is the architect of its own experience. Mindful resistance is also an act of courage. It means stepping out of the crowd, choosing a different pace, and embracing a different kind of success, one not measured by how much we do, but by how well we live. It is the choice to be awake in a world that profits from our distraction. As our mental evolution continues, we must learn that not all progress is movement. Some of the greatest growth happens in the still spaces, the pauses between thoughts, the moments of breath, the acts of conscious rest. In choosing these moments, we reclaim our clarity, our creativity, and our connection to what truly matters. In a noisy world, mindful resistance is the new wisdom. It says, I will not let the world pull me away from myself. I will choose what I give my energy to. I will protect the sacredness of thought, of focus, of peace. This is not escape. This is evolution. Chapter 15: The Creative Leap. In the evolutionary story of the human mind, one quality shines as both ancient and ever-renewing: creativity. Long before we built cities or split atoms, we painted on cave walls, composed rhythms with drums, and imagined gods in the clouds. Creativity has always been more than art. It is the spark that sets evolution into motion. The creative leap is the moment the mind transcends what is and imagines what could be, forging new paths, solving problems, and shaping realities from the unseen. Creativity is often misunderstood as the domain of artists, writers, or musicians. But in truth, creativity belongs to everyone. It is not a talent, it is a mental habit, a way of perceiving and participating in life. Whether we're inventing a solution to a conflict, reimagining a career path, designing a product, or simply cooking a meal in a new way, we are exercising creativity. What sets the creative leap apart from routine thinking is its capacity to connect the unconnected. The creative mind sees links where others see separation. It brings together logic and emotion, structure and spontaneity, memory and vision. It thrives in ambiguity, dances with possibility, and dares to try something no one else has tried before. Historically, the most significant leaps in civilization have come through creative insight. When a thinker, often working in silence or uncertainty, breaks free from old patterns and glimpses a new way forward. Einstein called imagination more important than knowledge, and with good reason. Knowledge tells us what is. Imagination tells us what could be. But creativity is not always comfortable. To leap creatively is to leave the known, to risk failure, to embrace the awkward first attempts and the silence before the spark. It demands courage, the courage to be different, to think differently, to be misunderstood or even rejected. It is often in those moments of discomfort that true originality is born. Modern neuroscience has confirmed that creativity engages both hemispheres of the brain. It involves divergent thinking, generating many ideas, and convergent thinking, refining them into something coherent and useful. It requires focus and freedom, solitude and collaboration, intuition and analysis. In this way, creativity is not chaotic. It is ordered improvisation, an elegant balance between wildness and wisdom. The conditions for creative leaps are not always external. More often, they arise from an internal shift, a moment of insight, stillness, or inspiration. That's why creativity flourishes in quiet minds, rested bodies, and open hearts. This is why daydreaming, walking, meditating, or engaging in play often unlocks fresh ideas. The mind, when allowed to wander with purpose, becomes fertile ground for innovation. In the age of automation and artificial intelligence, creativity is becoming the most valuable human asset. Machines may outperform us in calculation, repetition, and even logical decision-making. But they cannot dream. They cannot imagine a new symphony, a novel philosophy, or a story that stirs the soul. The creative leap will be what sets us apart, not just as thinkers, but as meaning makers. Moreover, creativity is not just a personal gift. It is a social force. It brings people together to build, express, question, and transform. From social movements to scientific breakthroughs, from literature to architecture, the creative impulse fuels progress not only in individuals, but in entire cultures. To make the creative leap is to trust the unknown. It is to honor the whisper of inspiration, the glimmer of a new idea, the playful urge to try. It is an act of hope, a belief that something new can emerge from the ordinary. As we evolve mentally, let us not only sharpen our logic or deepen our knowledge, let us leap. Let us imagine boldly, express freely, and create not for perfection, but for growth, joy, and transformation. For in every leap of creativity, the mind remembers its most sacred power, to bring something into the world that has never existed before. Chapter 16, Collective Consciousness. The human mind, for all its individuality, does not evolve in isolation. Our thoughts are shaped by conversations, our beliefs molded by culture, and our identities formed in relation to others. We are not just solitary thinkers, we are social minds, constantly influenced by and contributing to a vast, shared mental space. This shared field is known as collective consciousness, the invisible web of ideas, emotions, symbols, and behaviors that connects individuals into communities, cultures, and civilizations. From the beginning of human history, survival depended on cooperation. Tribes hunted together, built shelters together, protected one another. But beyond physical collaboration, they shared mental worlds. They passed down stories, rituals, customs, and languages, frameworks that allowed them to see and interpret reality in similar ways. These shared patterns became the roots of collective consciousness. Sociologist Emile Durkheim, who coined the term, described collective consciousness as the totality of beliefs and sentiments common to average citizens of the same society. It is what makes individuals feel part of a whole. It informs our morals, our taboos, our celebrations. It's the reason we stand during an anthem, mourn a national tragedy, or rally around a common cause. Yet collective consciousness is not static. It evolves as society evolves. The printing press expanded it. Radio and television broadcast it. The internet exploded it. Today, a single tweet can influence millions of minds across continents within seconds. Our collective mental space is now global, interconnected, and constantly shifting. This interconnectedness offers extraordinary potential. When positive ideas spread, kindness, innovation, justice, they can elevate entire societies. Movements for human rights, environmental stewardship, and mental health awareness have gained power through the ripple effect of shared consciousness. A thought, once sparked, can become a wave. However, there are shadows to this phenomenon. Collective consciousness can also spread fear, prejudice, misinformation, and division. When echo chambers form, whether online or offline, they reinforce limited perspectives and shut down critical thinking. What begins as belonging can become conformity. What begins as unity can turn into tribalism. This is why awareness of collective consciousness is vital in our mental evolution. To grow as individuals, we must learn to participate in the collective without losing the self. We must learn to question inherited ideas, examine groupthink, and resist the pull of blind agreement. The evolved mind contributes to the whole, but also challenges it, offering fresh vision, honest critique, and creative alternatives. At its highest form, collective consciousness can become a force for planetary transformation. As we face global challenges, climate change, inequality, technological disruption, the solutions will not come from isolated minds working alone. They will come from collaborative intelligence, from shared vision, from millions of minds aligned with the common good. Spiritual traditions have long recognized this deeper dimension of unity. Concepts like the universal mind, Christ consciousness, or Brahman, suggest that beyond our individual egos lies a shared field of awareness, a sacred oneness that transcends all separateness. In meditation, prayer, or moments of deep empathy, many people glimpse this field. They feel connected not just to others, but to all life, all time, all being. In modern terms, we might understand this as global empathy, the ability to feel and care beyond borders, beyond race, beyond ideology. It is the call to rise above petty divisions and to act as stewards of a shared human destiny. To nurture collective consciousness is to become more than a thinker. It is to become a contributor, a harmonizer, a visionary. It is to ask not only, what do I believe, but what am I adding to the shared mental space of the world? In the great story of mental evolution, The chapter of collective consciousness teaches us that our thoughts are never truly private. They ripple, they influence, they build. And when enough minds awaken together, the world itself can change. Chapter 17: Spiritual Evolution. As the human mind evolved through logic, language, emotion, and creativity, it eventually encountered a dimension beyond the tangible, a space that defied measurement, yet felt deeply real. This was not merely an intellectual pursuit, nor was it bound by culture or doctrine. It was the awakening of spiritual consciousness, the intuitive knowing that there is something greater than the individual self, something timeless, boundless, and deeply connected. This is the journey of spiritual evolution, a quiet yet profound phase of the mental journey where the soul begins to seek its own voice. Spirituality is not the same as religion, though the two often overlap. Religion offers structure, tradition, and community, ways to practice faith and align with shared values. But spirituality, in its purest form, is an inner unfolding. It is the hunger for meaning, the yearning for peace, the longing to understand our place in the cosmos. It is the silent question that emerges when the noise fades. Who am I, really? Throughout history, every civilization has given birth to spiritual seekers, mystics, sages, monks, shamans, and poets, who explored the realms of inner stillness and divine connection. From the meditative wisdom of the Buddha to the ecstatic devotion of Rumi, from the silent clarity of Laozi to the deep compassion of Jesus, the spiritual path has taken many forms, but always pointed in the same direction: inward. Spiritual evolution begins when the mind recognizes that outer success, sensory pleasure, and intellectual achievement, while valuable, do not satisfy the deepest layers of our being. We can accumulate knowledge and yet feel lost. We can possess much and still feel empty. This realization marks a turning point, the birth of inner seeking. The spiritually evolving mind starts to observe not just thoughts, but the thinker. It becomes aware of awareness itself. It sees the ego, the voice of separation, fear, comparison, and pride, and begins to loosen its grip. In its place emerges a quieter presence, calm, open, non-judgmental. This is the witness, the higher self, the part of us that has always been there, beneath the noise. Spiritual practices, such as meditation, prayer, breathwork, silence, service, or simply deep presence, become the tools through which this awakening deepens. They are not about escape, but expansion. They help us move from reactivity to response, from identity to essence, from chaos to clarity. In this space, the mind becomes more than an analytical instrument. It becomes a vessel for wisdom, compassion, and grace. Spiritual evolution doesn't deny the mind. It refines it, centers it, and ultimately transcends it. It helps us see beyond labels and roles, beyond past and future, beyond me and them. It dissolves the illusion of separation and replaces it with the experience of oneness. This inner shift brings with it profound outer changes. The spiritually awakened mind becomes more empathetic, more grounded, less attached to outcomes. It sees life not as a race to win, but as a dance to participate in. It begins to trust, not blindly, but deeply, that there is an intelligence greater than itself, flowing through all things. Importantly, spiritual evolution is not a destination. It is a process, gentle, personal, and often non-linear. There are moments of insight and moments of struggle. There are breakthroughs and setbacks. But each step brings us closer to wholeness. In a world dominated by speed and distraction, spiritual evolution is a revolutionary act. It invites us to be rather than become, to dwell in the now, and to live from the inside out. As our minds continue to evolve, the spiritual dimension ensures that we do not grow only in power, but also in presence. It reminds us that the ultimate goal of evolution is not to conquer the world, but to understand ourselves as one with it. Chapter 18. Rewiring Thought. One of the greatest discoveries in the modern study of the mind is also one of the most empowering. The brain can change. For centuries, it was believed that our mental wiring was fixed, that personality, habits, intelligence, and patterns of thought were more or less set in stone. But science has since revealed a far more hopeful truth. Through the power of neuroplasticity, the brain has the remarkable ability to adapt, renew, and reorganize itself throughout life. In essence, we can rewire thought, consciously shaping the way we think, feel, and behave. Every thought we think, every action we repeat, every emotion we feed, these leave behind trails in the brain, like footprints in wet sand. The more frequently we walk those paths, the deeper and more automatic they become. This is why habits feel hard to break, and why old beliefs can seem immovable. But it also means that by choosing new thoughts and behaviors, again and again, we begin to carve new mental pathways, replacing fear with courage, doubt with clarity, and stagnation with growth. Rewiring thought begins with awareness. Before we can change a pattern, we must see it clearly. Many of our limiting beliefs and automatic reactions were formed long ago, in childhood, in trauma, or in response to cultural conditioning. They operate like background programs, influencing our decisions without our full awareness. When we pause, observe, and reflect on our inner dialogue, we bring these patterns into the light. From there, we practice interruption. We learn to catch ourselves in moments of negativity or self-sabotage and consciously choose a different response. This could be replacing a critical thought with a compassionate one, replacing a reaction with a breath, or replacing avoidance with action. The shift may feel small at first, but over time, these changes accumulate, rewiring the brain from the inside out. Affirmations, visualization, gratitude practices, journaling, and meditation are all tools that help strengthen this process. They work by anchoring attention to empowering beliefs and states of mind, training the brain to expect growth instead of failure, joy instead of stress, possibility instead of limitation. These are not magic tricks. They are mental repetitions that recondition the mind for resilience, focus, and confidence. But rewiring thought is not just about positivity. It also involves facing discomfort, unlearning harmful narratives, releasing emotional baggage, and stepping into the unknown. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens at the edge of effort, where we stretch, stumble, and try again. This is where the true work of transformation lives. Modern therapy approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, and mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, are all built on the idea that we are not our thoughts. We are the observer of our thoughts, and we have the power to reshape them. Even severe mental health challenges have been improved through these techniques, proving the incredible resilience and plasticity of the human mind. Importantly, rewiring thought isn't a one-time fix. It's a lifelong practice. Just as muscles grow with regular movement, the mind evolves through consistent attention and intention. Like tending a garden, we must pull out weeds of fear and plant seeds of wisdom over and over again. In an age of external noise, fast information, and chronic stress, the ability to consciously guide our inner landscape is not just a benefit, it is a necessity. Those who master the art of self-directed thinking are not only more peaceful and productive, they are freer. Free from inherited limitations, free to choose their path, free to become who they are meant to be. Rewiring thought is the ultimate expression of mental evolution, the realization that we are not passengers of our minds, but pilots. And with each new thought, each mindful choice, each act of belief in ourselves, we are shaping the mind not only as it is, but as it can be. Chapter 19. The Future Mind. As we stand on the edge of a rapidly shifting world, one truth becomes clear. The future will not belong to those with the most information, but to those with the most adaptable, conscious, and creative minds. In this unfolding era of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, quantum computing, space exploration, and planetary urgency, the next great frontier is not just technological, it is mental. The future mind is not a distant dream. It is being shaped right now by the way we think, learn, connect, and evolve. The future mind will not be defined by its storage capacity or speed. Machines can already outperform us in raw data processing and calculation. What will set the human mind apart is its capacity for insight, empathy, intuition, and ethical imagination. These are not algorithmic. They are distinctly human, born of the complexity of our experiences, emotions, and evolving consciousness. In the coming decades, we will increasingly live and work alongside intelligent systems, tools that can write, build, predict, and even learn. This raises a crucial question. What is the role of the human mind in a machine-augmented world? The answer lies in elevation, not competition. The evolved mind of the future will use AI to automate the repetitive, freeing up time and energy to deepen our creativity, relationships, and sense of purpose. But this will require mental agility, the ability to unlearn and relearn, to navigate uncertainty with resilience, and to synthesize vast amounts of knowledge into meaningful insight. The future mind must be fluid, not rigid, guided by principles, not limited by patterns. Equally important is the need for ethical consciousness. With power comes responsibility. The technologies we are creating have the potential to heal or harm, to connect or divide, to liberate or control. The future mind must not only be intelligent, it must be wise. This means integrating moral reasoning, compassion, and long-term vision into every layer of thought and innovation. Education, too, must evolve. The systems of the past, built for memorization and standardization, no longer serve a dynamic, fast-changing world. The future mind will not ask, "What do I need to know?" but "How can I learn, adapt, and contribute?" Critical thinking, emotional literacy, global awareness, and digital discernment will be essential skills, not optional luxuries. Moreover, the future mind will be more collective than ever before. Already, we are experiencing a shift from isolated knowledge to shared intelligence. Communities of thinkers collaborating across borders, time zones, and cultures. This global brain, if guided wisely, has the potential to address our most pressing challenges, from climate change to inequality to mental health. And yet, for all its external sophistication, the future mind must never lose sight of the inner world. As external noise grows louder, the need for inner clarity will only deepen. Practices like mindfulness, contemplation, and self-inquiry will be essential tools, helping us stay grounded, authentic, and inwardly free in an age of endless distraction. The future mind is not a prediction. It is a possibility, a direction we choose with every thought, every action, every question we dare to ask. It is a mind that listens deeply, imagines boldly, connects meaningfully, and evolves consciously. We are not simply watching the future unfold. We are creating it. And the mind is both the canvas and the brush. In the final phase of this journey, we will return to where we began, not to complete the circle, but to rise into a spiral. The future mind is not the end of evolution. It is the invitation to take the next step, with open eyes, open hearts, and minds ready not just to know, but to awaken. Chapter 20. Becoming Mindful. At the end of this journey through the landscapes of thought, from primal perception to futuristic cognition, we arrive not at a conclusion, but at a calling, to live each day with awareness, presence, and purpose. To become mindful is not just a practice or a passing trend. It is the natural flowering of an evolved mind, one that no longer seeks escape in distraction or validation in noise, but finds depth in now. Mindfulness is often mistaken as passive or overly gentle, but in truth, it is a profound act of strength. It takes courage to slow down in a world that idolizes speed. It takes clarity to choose stillness when the mind races with 1,000 thoughts. And it takes intention to resist the pull of reactivity, choosing instead to respond with grace. At its heart, mindfulness is the art of noticing, not just our thoughts, but the space between them. Not just our emotions, but the story behind them. Not just the external events of our lives, but the internal narratives we attach to them. It is a steady gaze into the present moment without judgment or avoidance. The mindful mind is not free from challenges, but it is free within them. It no longer clings to certainty or avoids discomfort. Instead, it meets life as it is, raw, beautiful, unpredictable, and learns to walk through it with openness and curiosity. This presence brings gifts: deeper relationships, better health, greater clarity, and a stronger sense of self. But beyond the personal, mindfulness also offers a pathway to collective transformation. A mindful society is one that listens before it reacts, considers before it consumes, and values being as much as doing. Becoming mindful is also an antidote to many of the ailments of our time: anxiety, burnout, loneliness, division. These are not just mental or emotional problems. They are symptoms of disconnection from self, from others, from the present. Mindfulness reconnects us. It reminds us that we are not our thoughts, our fears, our achievements. We are the awareness behind them, spacious, calm, alive. The practice can begin anywhere. One breath, one moment, one conscious pause. You don't need a special room, a perfect routine, or a deep understanding of philosophy. You simply need the willingness to return to this breath, this step, this conversation. That return is the real revolution. In education, mindfulness teaches students to manage stress, focus attention, and respond with kindness. In leadership, it fosters empathy, ethical decision-making, and clarity under pressure. In families, it builds emotional intelligence and deeper bonds. In every sphere of life, mindfulness becomes the invisible thread that weaves together wisdom and compassion. And most importantly, mindfulness is not about escaping the mind, it's about elevating it. It is the final integration of all that has come before: logic, emotion, creativity, morality, spirituality. It does not negate progress, it grounds it. It does not dull ambition, it clarifies it. To become mindful is to become fully alive, no longer lost in the past or fixated on the future, but anchored in the only time that ever truly exists: this moment. And in that moment, the mind is no longer fragmented. It is whole. It is awake. It is free. As this book closes, your journey continues. Mental evolution is not a race or a finish line. It is a rhythm, a lifelong unfolding of insight, intention, and presence. Each day is an opportunity to shape your thoughts, to choose your responses, and to expand your awareness. And in doing so, you are not just evolving your own mind, you are contributing to a more conscious world. So breathe deeply. Step forward gently. And remember, the most powerful mind is not the one that knows the most, but the one that notices the most, and with that noticing, creates a better world.